Alright, this is going to be a demo of how to cut your foam core out for a shape that's going to help you keep your piece in the round and to the same kind of concave, convex shapes. So I picked this. I kind of X'd out those handles because I'm not going to do the handles. I've translated my image onto the foam core. You'll have your 2 scale 15 to 17 inch tall prints, and then you'll cut those out and you'll use that to transfer over to the uh, foam core. So I'm just taking my X-Acto knife and then I'm just going to cut this shape out. I want this left side where my hand is sitting, that's the side that I want to keep. I want basically the negative of this form. So the X-Acto knife didn't quite get through the foam core, so use a pair of scissors if you need to. My X-Acto knife wasn't very sharp, but if you have a nice sharp X-Acto knife, it should work perfectly. So you're just going to cut that so you have that negative of that shape. So it's going to be half of your pot, and it's going to be the negative form, and then that's what you're going to use. Make sure you write your name on it and your class number on it, section 1 or 2, so that we don't get them confused with anybody else. So you're going to look at how wide your reference photo base is, and you're going to then just take some clay and kind of hand pat out a small slab. You can use a rolling pin if you wish. I just did it by hand here. So once you get that to about half an inch thick, move it to a banding wheel and you can spin it and really steadily use your needle tool or your stick tool or something like that to draw a perfect circle, and then you'll cut off that excess, and then you'll translate that small circled slab over to your board that you'll be working on for the rest of the piece. Always make sure you're using a wooden board, not a drywall board, because the drywall, when this thing gets heavier, it will want to possibly break. So you're going to look at that profile of your form, and then you're going to want to start rolling out some coils. You can roll out a bunch of coils ahead of time and then wrap them in plastic. I usually just roll them as I go. I find that's the easiest method, and then they don't want to dry out on me. So you roll them just like Play-Doh when you were a kid or something like that. You want to get the knife even coil, and sometimes this takes a little practice, but I want to get a coil that's about the thickness of my thumb, maybe maybe a little thicker possibly, because we are going to pinch this and make it thinner. So it's a little thicker than my thumb, and that's perfect. So you're going to take your piece, your bottom, and you're going to make sure you slip and score all the way around on both sides. Be careful not to use too much water at this point, but if you are coming in and your piece has set up and is kind of stiff, you're going to make sure you want to slip and score really well. But if the clay is really soft, only use a little bit of water just so it can attach. If you use too much water, then it's going to get really, really floppy and really soft on you, and it might want to concave or fall apart as you're doing some of the arches or later sections of your form. So just be cautious of that, and as you're working, just slip the coil or score the coil and slip it. This is really fresh clay, so I'm actually not putting water on my coil since I put water and slipped and scored the base. I'm just going to score it so that that will attach really nicely. And then using the banding wheel, you're just going to press that in to your base, creating your foot of your form. So then that overlap, just kind of pinch that off right there, and then just you see that kind of how it rolls over. You're just going to want to make sure that you push that down and work those two seams together, kind of that crack, kind of meld them two together, just like that. And now we're going to want to push that coil into the base. So I'm going to use my thumb, and I'm just going to kind of push that clay into the base slab, and just go slow, steady, and go around the piece evenly. And you want to make sure you do it slowly and carefully, because you want to keep that circle. You want to keep it nice and symmetrical, and then just smooth that out. You can use a sponge for this. I usually just use my finger. And then you're going to do the same thing on the outside, pushing the clay down into the base. And once you've gotten that all together, you just kind of go around and kind of touch up any kind of pieces you need. I like to use a rib and just smooth that outside, and that really gets that first coil and that slab really connected. And then you're going to want to use your form and kind of check the angle of your foot. So my angle needs to go way in. So I'm going to go around and pinching together. I'm going to pinch towards the center, bringing my hands in as I pinch, just like that. You could bring your hands out if you're wanting to go out. Bring your hands in if you want to go in. So I'm just kind of pinching and pushing that clay to go inward, so I get that more of that beveled, angled foot. Then I can use my rib to kind of smooth that out and also help get it to go inwards. And then use your foam core and check it again. So it's not quite there, so I need to keep going inwards. And I'll just keep repeating this, going around, pinching it, adjusting it, and then checking the shape, checking the contour, and checking the contour all the way around the piece, 360 degrees. So that's getting a little bit better. So I turn the piece and see where it might be a little off. So take your time with this. If you rush this, it's going to want to collapse on yourself, and you're not going to get that nice symmetrical form. So really take your time with this. If you need and I use this little stick tool, and I just kind of get that flange of clay off, and that gives it a nice little bevel there, so that if I need to use a cutting wire to cut this off of the board, they'll give an avenue for that cutting wire to go through. And it gives a nice little rounded foot like my original picture. So that's looking pretty good. And I'll do more refining of this later, but you don't want to work too much on the same spot. There's always this thing about overworking it. So now I'm ready for the next coil, and I slipped and score it. Just like the first one, you want to do this on every coil. Because if you don't do this, you might have a spot that's not connected right, and as it dries, it could crack, and you could have it crack all the way around, and you don't want that. So I'm adding that coil just into the inside, and then pinching that off, working that seam together, and then that coil needs to get pushed into that first coil. So I'm just slightly going on the inside, going down. I mean, this is kind of like what we did when we made our bigger spheres, and then on the outside pushing up the clay. So inside down, outside up. And then I look at my contour, and this needs to start to go out. So I'm pinching and I'm pulling out. So I'm taking my time here. This is just sped up, actually. So again, adjusting the form, and then checking my contour and back and forth, and then adding another coil. And you'll keep doing this process over and over, and I would do maybe 4 or 5 coils at a time, let it set up a bit, then do another 4 or 5 coils. But if you're doing something that is going way out or way in, or you're drastically changing the direction of your contour, then you might want to take a little bit more time. And this will take some practice to kind of know when to stop. So in class, if you're worried about it starts getting floppy, or it's not wanting to hold up, or it's sagging, that's a good sign of when to stop and just let it set up for a little while. Maybe hit it with a hairdryer and then keep going. So I'm continuously looking at this, and so I'm marking that, so like each of those marks would be like a coil going up. And then when you're ready to let it set up, you always want to take a little strip of plastic. So I'm just tearing off of the strip of plastic. And you want to wrap it around that rim. You want that rim to stay fresh and soft for the next coil, but you want everything else to stiffen up. So I am putting that plastic just over the lip, maybe half an inch down on each side. Kind of making sure it's contacting both sides of that lip. And smoothing that out, and there you go. And then you can let that set up while you're decorating something else, and then come back to it after 15-20 minutes and continue coiling.